Great. Thanks so much. This has been an awesome discussion. Really appreciate all of our speakers providing this information. I see that Jessica Lee is on, so we're going to go ahead and move forward in our agenda. And Jessica is going to tell us a little bit more detail about hazard simplification for winter and some of the changes that are occurring to our extreme cold and freeze products. So Jessica, if you're ready, you can share your screen and take it away.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you and see your screen.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm at another conference right now, so hopefully background noise stays at a minimum. But yeah, so hello everyone. Thank you for inviting me to join your fall symposium today. My name is Jessica Lee. I'm the National Weather Service Public Weather Services Program Coordinator, and today I'll just be providing an overview of our recent HACCP changes to our cold-related watch warning and advisory products. Starting with the bottom line up front, so just highlighting the most important takeaways if you happen to zone out in the next 20 minutes. But the main details are that our cold weather watch warning advisories are now NPWs, not WSWs. Additionally, as I'm sure Shannon mentioned, hazard services, not GFE, is what will be used to issue these and all NPW products. The criteria for our cold watch warning advisory products is now based on apparent temperature and not strictly wind chill. And finally, the issuance guidance may or may not have changed for your CWA, as we did roll out new national guidance for cold products with our HACCP changes. As of October 1st, 2024, the NWS has officially updated its suite of cold weather products as part of the ongoing hazard simplification project. So as part of this, our wind chill watch and warning were consolidated into the extreme cold watch and warning, and the wind chill advisory was replaced with the cold weather advisory. Additionally, our hard freeze watch and warning were consolidated into the freeze watch and warning. And these changes were made based on data collected during partner and public engagements, surveys, and social science research. So why are we making these changes? Well, first of all, the changes will allow us to emphasize cold as its own hazard, and that cold is dangerous with or without wind. We are also able to simplify our messaging by using a single product type for both the extreme cold wind chill and the freeze hard freeze products, resulting in clearer watch warning advisory maps. And finally, as I alluded to, this gave us the opportunity to develop more consistent guidance for cold criteria that is based on climatology and adjusted for impacts. And then again, as I mentioned on the first slide, the extreme cold watch warning and cold weather advisories will now be issued as non-precipitation weather products, or NPWs, rather than as winter weather products, or WSWs. By pulling our cold products out from the WSW and putting them under the NPW, this will help make it easier for us to message cold impacts and help ensure that cold does not get lost in the messaging for our bigger winter weather events. It will also help you all, as well as our partners, and especially the media, be able to display our cold products separately from our winter products, especially during those bigger events. If you're worried that wind chill is going away, it is not. But again, our cold weather headlines will now be based on the apparent temperature instead of just on wind chill. And as we know, apparent temperature can be the air temperature if the wind is calm, or the wind chill temperature if wind is present. So again, this just allows us to place the emphasis on the fact that with or without wind, cold is dangerous for public safety. And as noted on the slide, most likely you will still be issuing these products based on the wind chill temperatures, but again, just opening up that flexibility that there's no wind criteria you need to meet, that it is just based on your apparent temperature in general. So when issuing the new cold products and hazard services, you will now have the option to select the reason for your cold hazard, as you can see on the hazard information display or HID on the right side of the screen. So if you select temperature as the reason, it will populate the what bullet with dangerously cold temperatures as low as, and for extreme cold watch warnings, and with very cold temperatures as low as for cold weather advisories. And if you select wind as the reason, The what bullet will state dangerously cold wind chills as low as for extreme cold watch warning, and very cold wind chills as low as for cold weather advisories. And again, MPW products will all be issued through hazard services, including our new cold and freeze products that we're talking about today. So this is just an example of the extreme cold warning being issued in hazard services. So in the hazard information display on the left, wind was selected as the reason, and that has resulted in the wording on the right into the product editor to match up with that. To summarize our changes of our cold-related products, which again will now all be under the MPW product, we have our extreme cold watch and warning, which will use a new EC VTEC phenomena code, and the cold weather advisory will use the new VTEC phenomena code of CW, and then you can see the Wawa colors that will align with those. Additionally, freeze, watch, and warning will remain the same, with the FC VTEC and their colors also remaining the same. Our old VTEC phenomena codes of HZ for hard freeze and WC for wind chill have been retired. Now to dive in a little bit more into this new issuance guidance that was developed for the extreme cold watch warnings and the cold weather advisories. So this guidance was developed in collaboration with a team of more than 30 SMEs from across the Weather Service. And we had a couple representatives from each NWS region, as well as representatives from CPC, WPC, AFS, and we also had a couple people from the ECC up in Canada that were a part of our team. And our team started by looking at climatology and return interval data. And so looking at the average number of days with 3 hours at or above specific wind chill temperature thresholds. And then the team narrowed its focus to those wind chills that occurred for 3 or more hours, that occurred 1 to 3 days per year for extreme cold warnings and 3 to 7 days per year for cold weather advisories. So we were trying to strike a balance between not needing to issue headlines too often, but also not, almost never issuing headlines. So looking for that happy medium. But we also then took into consideration, we don't really want more than 2 or 3 different criteria across the CWA. And we also work to avoid drastic adjustments from what your current criteria or what your previous criteria was. So we tried to avoid changing things from their current state by more than like 5 to 10 degrees. So once we did our initial run through of the wind chill climatologies with the return intervals, the next step for our team was to consult with WFOs to get their local expertise, their opinions, maybe find out about locations where climatology doesn't paint the full picture. And then once we reviewed with the WFOs, we then consulted with external SMEs and partners such as CDC with their mortality data, just to learn more about cold-related impacts and revise our guidance from there. So overall, this was a very iterative process over the past 2-3 years between the WFOs and the regions to achieve what are now our final guidance maps. And again, the goal of this new guidance was to develop something that was based on climatology and adjusted for impacts in order to attain better consistency with our headline issuance and criteria across the National Weather Service. And before I show you our maps, just a reminder that we are calling this national guidance instead of criteria because it is indeed guidance. And so as I mentioned, this guidance provides a consistent and science-based foundation for your watch warning advisory decisions, but it is not a strict set of criteria that cannot be deviated from. We encourage you to work with your local partners and tailor your criteria to your specific needs within your CWA and to specific events. And if you're going to make large changes from what is the national guidance, we encourage you to work with the regions and draft supplementals to describe those changes. So I will drop this link in at the end of the presentation, but so these maps are available on ArcGIS Online. The link is also on our public program Google site. You must have a NOAA account to log in and view the maps. They will not be publicly viewable, but we will have a screenshot of them in our directive update, which should hopefully be coming out any day now. Yeah, and so again, we're not making these publicly available just due to the fact that WFOs have the flexibility to make adjustments as needed, and so we didn't want to lock people in if they would need to make any adjustments. So we encourage you to work with your partners to advertise what your new guidance will be. So yeah, this is the new extreme cold warning guidance map, and then this is the new cold weather advisory guidance map. And then here are just some sample locations from across Central Region where you can see how the criteria guidance has changed. And this is for advisories. So on this slide, you can see, for example, for Duluth, Minnesota, their advisory guidance is actually 5 degrees colder than previously, while locations like Dodge City, Paducah, and Indy are 5 degrees warmer. And for some locations, such as Houghton and Des Moines, the guidance did not change. And the changes were not necessarily linear between the advisory and warning guidance. So here now, Duluth and Des Moines remain the same for their warning, while Houghton, Dodge City, and Indy were all warned by 5 degrees, and Paducah warning was warmed by 10 degrees. So again, this all relates back to the climatology and the impacts that our team spent a couple of years looking at. And then just to go over a scenario quickly. Okay, I think there's some kind of drumming demonstration downstairs. I don't know how loud that is. I'm gonna move quick. Okay, hopefully it is a little quieter in here. A bit chaotic here. So in this scenario, we have a winter storm that is forecast to track against the forecast area during the afternoon with 2 to 5 inches of snow expected and accumulations expected to taper off by mid-evening, but northwest winds will increase as the surface low exits, blowing 20 to 25 miles per hour with gusts to 35 miles per hour. So that will bring blowing and drifting snow. And then confidence is high in both the snow bounce and our blowing and drifting related impacts. Additionally, temperatures are expected to taper off quickly with the passage of the storm, with morning lows dropping into the single digits below zero with wind chills in the -20 to -35 range. So here's just a little timeline of our hazards. So in the evening, we'll have the snow, which will then taper off, and we'll transition to the blowing, drifting snow hazard overnight, and then eventually by morning, we will have the extreme cold. And so you coordinate with your surrounding offices what products might you issue. So in 2023, what you might have done is issued one winter weather advisory to cover the entire period, and that would cover the snow, the blowing snow, and the wind chills. And so now in the future, or the current year, what would change is that now you would probably issue 2 separate products. So you would issue the winter weather advisory, or WSW, to cover the snowfall and blowing snow impacts. And then you would, and that would run just from the evening into the overnight period and then end. And then you would issue a separate cold weather advisory, which would be an NPW, and that would not need to start until around 6Z and go into the morning, and that would just specifically cover the dangerously cold conditions. Okay, and finally, before I end, I just want to give a plug for our public program Google site. It has a lot of information on all of our hazards, but specifically on our extreme cold page, we have trainings related to these, has some cold changes, as well as outreach materials you can use to help message these to your partners. And so we just encourage everyone to check those out. And again, once I'm done and I put my laptop down, I will throw these 2 links into the chat for everyone. And with that, I can take any questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Jessica. If you do have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat box or raise your hand. All right. Well, I am not seeing anything on my end. Thanks so much for joining us while you're at a conference. Really appreciate that. Unfortunately, we didn't hear the drumming on our end, so sounded good here. Appreciate that.
Good. It's like very dramatic here. So, Yeah, and there's our emails. And if you can't remember that, you can also email public.program@noaa.gov, which will go to both Kim and I. And so, yeah, never hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions about the HACCP cold. And the spring we'll have our HACCP heat changes coming up. So yeah, open door, feel free to email us. And thank you again for having me today.
Absolutely. Thank you again.